What's up, guys? Rick here with your preview for this week's BMW Championship, where we are going to map this golf course that has not been played since 2006 on the PGA Tour. So really no data to go off of, but we'll do some satellite imagery. We'll go through the field and see what the best and maybe the worst options that are available for this week. And of course, we're going to use data, logic, and reason along the way. This is another no-cut event, so only 50 golfers in this field. The top 30 will move on to the Tour Championship next week. So top 50, no cut, 4 guaranteed rounds outside the DQ or a WD. We're going to start with this golf course in Castle Rock, Colorado. I talked through the altitude, the effective yardages, and I mapped this golf course to show you what we're working with. I recorded this yesterday, so don't freak out when you see me in a different shirt, but here is the breakdown of Castle Rock. All right, so here's Castle Pines. I was mapping this out, and first things first, yes, it says 8,000 yards on the scorecard, maybe even 8,100 yards, but it's at 6,000 feet of altitude. So if you use the 2% for every 1,000 feet of elevation rule, you're talking about this thing, it's going to play like 7,000 yards. Okay. So keep that in mind. The numbers are obviously being fairly fluctuated here. What I noticed, fluctuated was the word I was looking for, but what I noticed about this golf course is there are a lot of really interesting ball striking situations. So firstly, the fairways, the rough and its thickness will matter because there are some spots in which fairways get pinched. It's not tree lined. You're going to have, I don't think there's a lot of risk in losing your golf ball if you miss the fairway, except for a couple of spots. But I think if you miss the fairway, you're just playing out of the rough. So I think depending on how thick the rough is going to matter. On a lot of there's a really good job on a lot of these drives, a lot of these first shots off the tee, where the trouble is often on the inside of the dog leg, which is good. That requires strong shots. You can't get away with anything there. So I think driving it well will be important. Number 2 here, you see, a 342-yard drive. That's very much going to be in play this week for a lot of guys. You're starting to see things pinch in there. I'll try not to get too much into the approach shots, but as you're already seeing, a lot of the approach shots have water coming into play. Here's number 3 again, a dog leg to the left, but it kind of comes into play more on the second shot with trouble on the inside. This little, I don't know what to call it, ravine, creek, whatever. You see elements of this throughout the golf course. So it might not be full on ponds in terms of bodies of water, but you are seeing these little ravines that might gobble up some golf balls. And again, this is a very difficult landing zone here on number 2. You're either laying back to the fat spot, or if you are pushing it up there, you're getting into 36-yard wide territory where 2 yards off the left-hand side is water. Anything on the left half of the fairway is blocked out by this tree, which makes this fairway effectively 18 yards wide if you try to hit a drive. That's really interesting. And then you're playing to a green, and I'll just point this out here while we're at it. A lot of these water hazards on approach shots are cut right up to the edge of the green. Okay, which I also really like. So I think there are some really cool elements about this golf course from a design standpoint and a strategy standpoint. So when you start moving, this pin position around and you start throwing in, average tour dispersions from 164 yards, for example, like a lot of these are finding the water. Now that's why guys have to take their target not at the pin, but that will still bring in some trouble. That was number 3, by the way. I think I might have said number 2. So you're seeing that a lot, and I'll just kind of flip through some of these some more. Again, here's number 5, probably a driver hole. It starts to narrow out a little bit there at 340. Again, that's in play for a lot of guys this week, especially being a little bit wind dependent. Number 6, trouble on both sides of the dog leg, but fairway bunkers on the inside leg of the dog leg. And then, so now your landing zone, if you're trying to fly this bunker here, which is, what's this going to be? Whoops, from the tee. 302. Yeah, so I mean, you're going to have guys definitely try to carry this, and that's to the narrow part. So I do think you're going to have to be a pretty strong driver of the ball here. Here's a par 5. Let's get to some. The back nine's got some more. Yeah, here we go. So here's a good example of this ravine type situation. So the pond at 300 yards is on the right-hand side of number 9, but for another 100 yards up the right is that pond that will eat up your golf ball. It's like 1 yard or 2 yards off the fairway. Here's a very horizontal, narrow green. So I think you've got to be a strong driver, and I also think distance control with your approach play. I mean, I'm looking for ball strikers here. Here's another one. Here's the green on 10. That water's just cut up basically 2 yards off the green, and I imagine that slope there slopes down into the water. That's a pretty strong shot, 190 yards in on 10 over water over the last 50 yards of it. I mean, you are going to need to be a very strong ball striker here, aren't you? Here's a 194-yard par 3 with water on short and to the left of this entire green. Going to have to play to the back there. So there are some really interesting spots here. Here's another one. Here's 12. So a 338 run out on this green, or excuse me, on this fairway, where that's probably in play. And then on your second shot, water all the way up the left. No, just no bailout, nowhere you can go. Again, I think you're going to have to play out of the fairway. I also don't know if just blind distance, if distance is your only skill set, I'd be a little bit worried for you. I think we need distance and a little bit of accuracy, not a ton of accuracy, not like we've seen in recent weeks, right? But I do think you're going to need some, because you got to keep it in play. Here's another one, just this. So the water starts, what is that, 60 yards short of the fairway, or 60 yards short of the green, intersects the fairway, and then works all the way up to the left-hand side. So you're seeing a lot of, again, 15. A dog leg that then forces you to hit at a green that is protected by water. And you're just seeing this everywhere. Number 16, another one. Just the water cuts right into the green. It's a par 3. You got to carry the whole thing. Here's a good one. 17. This river, creek, ravine, whatever, basically runs like 250 yards up the left-hand side of this entire hole. So you can't bail out there. It narrows to 24 yards at 330. This is going to be cool, I think. Like, this is going to be really cool with the amount of strong shots that you have to hit on your first and second stroke. So here's what I think. Strong driving, meaning distance and a touch of accuracy. So maybe call it 66% distance, 33% accuracy if you're talking about total driving. I think you're going to need to be a really strong second shot player. With how many, I mean, if you're a below average second shot player, you're not necessarily just playing out of rough around the green or just missing greens. You might be putting penalty strokes on your scorecard, which is obviously not going to be very good. Things that I will look for early in the week. How thick is the rough? I think that'll matter. If the rough is thick and difficult to extract yourself out of, we can boost accuracy up a little bit more. Because it's not a tree line fairways, it's not anything like that. And then the other thing is, how difficult are the around the green areas? You do see mostly, there's water obviously, but then, bunkering and thick rough around the greens, not necessarily seeing a lot of short grass, which I think is going to be good for some of the guys that struggle around the greens. They're not going to have tight lies around the greens. So, like Victor Hovland might, based on what we saw at the in Memphis, his like career skill set might be something that's really good around here. Strong driver, strong second shot player. Maybe he does struggle in some of the around the green areas, but he might not be as penalized this week. So those are a couple things that I'd be looking for as we learn more about this golf course, if we can get some quotes from players. But I think it's going to be really interesting. I think it's going to be really fun. And I'm looking forward to it. All right. Thanks, Past Rick, for that great insight on Castle Pines. All right. Let's go to the cheat sheet here. This is my website, RickRunGood.com. Everything you see from this point forward will be from my website. And with 50 golfers, there is a very sizable $10,000 range. Similar situation to what we had last week. The reason these guys are here is likely because they're playing very good golf right now, or they did a ton of work to earn enough FedEx Cup points earlier in the year. But most of them are playing great golf. You can even see of the top 5 most expensive golfers, 4 of them finished inside the top 4 last week, including the winner, Hideki Matsuyama. Rory McIlroy was the only one who did not. More on that in just a second. Scotty Scheffler is the most expensive at $12,300, but for the first time, I'm not going to start there. I want to point out one thing quickly here out of the gate. If you go to the power rankings on RickRunGood.com, I have this set to the last 36 rounds. That's the default that I set this for. Historically, 36 rounds is the most predictive or the most correlated to future results. So that's where I like to start here. And for the first time that I can remember here in 2024, maybe even dating back to last year, Scotty Scheffler's name is not on top of this list. And it is still a very good number that he's putting up. 2.8 strokes gained per round is just an insane amount, right? If you're a 1 stroke per round player, you might be a top 20 player in the world. If you're a 2 stroke per round player, you're probably the number 1 player in the world over, a long extended period of time. Anywhere close to 3 is Tiger-esque, right? That's kind of where you're at. And Scotty's lived around 2.8 to 3 for much of the last year. Xander Schauffele just passed him with that performance that he had last week. 2.8 strokes gained per round. 2.88, excuse me. So he has just edged out Scotty's 2.80. And if you look at how they're doing it, Scotty does beat Xander from tee to green, but Xander's putter is what makes up that gap, and then just a little bit more because Xander's nearly a stroke per round putter guy. The rest of the way, both have very good around the green games. Both are fairly sound off the tee, very good off the tee, I should say. And then Scotty gets him pretty significantly on approach, but that's how the math adds up. So we're going to start with Xander Schauffele. And since the Open Championship victory, he finishes 9th at the Olympics. I didn't really think he had his best stuff there, and he actually said his game didn't feel super sharp. Then he goes out and finishes T2 in Memphis last week. This is, I'll just, kind of flip back and forth between Scotty and Xander's profiles here. I mean, they're both just video game stuff, right? They're both just all green all the time. When you look at the type of skill set that's probably going to have success around here, I think Xander's a really good option for a cheaper price than Scotty. And that's like almost sacrilegious for me to say that at this point. But I don't think people realize how long Xander has gotten off the tee, how accurate he is off the tee, how he keeps it in play, how he rarely makes mistakes, if ever makes mistakes. These greens are probably going to be pushing 13 on the stimp. I think the faster we go on greens, the better it is for Xander over Scotty. I don't know if that's entirely true, but that's my sense of the matter here. And I think that Xander is very much headed, like he feels like he's on the uptick still. Scotty feels like he's been playing as well as he has all year. But when you look at a $1,200 difference in DFS for DFS purposes, that Xander's profile now, I believe, all things considered, surpasses Scotty's, which is crazy. But these guys have both been awesome. There is probably a pretty significant gap to Rory McIlroy, but just to put a bow on this Scotty Scheffler talk, in Scotty's defense, didn't even have his best stuff last week and finished fourth, right? He only gained 7.5 strokes ball striking, where that is his worst performance since the US Open, right? He is capable and has routinely gained 12, 13, or 14 strokes ball striking. The good sign was that he did pick up 2 shots with the putter again. So, yeah, I mean, Scotty was a birdie on 17 on Sunday away from applying all the pressure. He birdied 17 and 18 on Sunday. It might be a completely different. He might win. He might be in a playoff. Might be a completely different story about how those guys play the final few holes. But yeah, Scotty's awesome. But don't take it lightly. I think these two guys are very much in their own tier. And then for DFS purposes, because you're getting a discount on Xander, it is fairly appealing. We have to have the Rory McIlroy conversation, because he will. I don't think he's going to be very popular, right? Relatively speaking, you've got the 2 big boys at the top. Below them are Hideki, Victor Hovland, and Colin Morikawa. Colin and Hideki have been just sweethearts in the fantasy world the last half of the year. And then Victor starting to show glimpses of what we saw in 2023. We're going to talk about all those guys. So I think it leaves Rory McIlroy in a really awkward spot. And it kind of depends on how quickly you think Rory bounces back here. It was ugly in Memphis. He lost. It was one of his worst driving performances ever. It was one of his worst approach performances ever. It was one of his worst putting performances ever. The good news, I suppose, you get it all out of the way in one shot. The bad news is, can he bounce back from that? Well, he had a pretty horrible Open for 2 rounds, lost throughout the bag, and then played well in his next start at the Olympics, though there was a week in between that. The other thing is, these numbers are a bit exaggerated. Most guys' worst tournaments ever come in no-cut events, right? If you're not playing well and you're out of it and you're just, kind of going through the motions, if this was a regular event, he would have been cut through 2 rounds, and this would not be his worst performances ever. But that's kind of the nature of the beast here, and it was. So it's a fact. Rory rarely has consecutive starts in which he plays poorly. He usually bounces back rather quickly. The concern is that we've never seen him really play this bad. Is fatigue setting in? Possibly. Is this a good golf course for him? Every golf course in the world is probably a good one for Rory, but the way that it's not going to be, he's not just going to be able to hit it 350 yards down the middle every single time. There are going to be landing spots. Guys are going to have to play from similar positions. He's probably going to have to club down a few times to get to those areas. So I believe it does take away a little bit of his superpower, which is the driver. And outside of that, the rest of it is we're just kind of guessing. So I'm probably going to wait and see. The Wednesday live chat will give us a better idea of what Rory McIlroy's projected ownership is going to be, but I don't think it's going to end up being a situation where I can get a ton of him based on what I'm thinking right now. Hideki Matsuyama, this has been trending. If you've been following the channel, you've known about the unbelievable ball striking, the increased putting. He gets it done. This should be no surprise to anyone who has been watching all week long. It seems like he is going to be reunited with his caddy Shota this week in Denver. I think it's going to be an okay spot for him. You're probably not going to get 8.2 strokes putting. You're probably buying at the top. I really like Hideki's chances. Probably next week a little bit better at Eastlake. Not so much here at the BMW, just because of how popular I expect him to be. But again, we'll see on Wednesday. Colin Morikawa loses 3.8 strokes on approach in Memphis. This does not bother me one single bit. It is good to see that he gained 2.7 strokes putting. This to me feels like a buy low spot. The worst approach week that we've seen from Colin, which happened last week, that was his worst approach week in, at least 2 years. I'm not going to scroll through all those results, but at least 2 years, he finishes T22 in a field of 70. So still very, very good. He's going to play out of the fairway often. If he can keep it dry, he's in a very good position, which leaves us with Victor Hovland. And what in the world are we going to do here? I don't know if I'm ready to declare Victor back, but very, very close, if not back. Okay. So I'm not like 100%, but I'm like 85%. Here's the facts of the matter. From a just anecdotal standpoint, Victor did an unbelievably transparent job of describing what was wrong with his swing before the FedEx St. Jude Championship and the things that he's been working through. And it is all about a pattern. It's all about a feel. It is all about positioning. And if you don't know, he's a very technical golfer, like very technical in his golf swing, and he has great body control. I mean, he didn't even start playing golf until he was like 13 or 14, something like that. So to even be at this level, he has unbelievable hand-eye coordination. He's unbelievable body control. So once he gets his body into a spot, he can kind of feel that and get it in there every single time. So the thought had always been that when Victor clicks, when it finally clicks in for him and he gets that feel, it's all going to come back, and it's going to come back in a hurry. And I think that is what we're seeing right now with the 4.5 strokes that he gained ball striking at the Olympics, and then 8.5 ball striking in Memphis last week, and he almost won the golf tournament. He still is a problem around the greens. Yes, that has regressed 100%. The putter was good last week. So now we've got at least like 7 of his last 8 have been really good ball striking weeks. Around the green is still a problem. Putter is good. When I was showing you the golf course, when I was showing you Castle Pines, if I just didn't know anything about Victor Hovland and looked at his stat profile, looked at his strengths, looked at his weaknesses, it'd be a really good golf course for him, right? It's going to demand strong ball striking, accuracy, and length off the tee. It's going to demand great distance control, which he showed in Memphis last week, which is something that has had trouble with all year long. And as far as around the green areas, yes, there is sand that might cause trouble, but it's just thick rough. It's not short grass. It's not really tricky spots around these greens. Reminds me a lot of Bay Hill, quite frankly, in terms of like the stuff that's around protecting the greens. So long story short, I'm quite bullish on Victor. Just we've seen him do this before. We saw him do it at the PGA Championship and then kind of lose it again. I think we're very, very close, if not back already. Very quickly on Ludwig Oberg, just because he's the last guy in the 10K range that we didn't talk about, I think he might just be hitting a wall, which is honestly understandable. He's gone from playing, collegiate golf to playing like a ton of golf in a year where he went straight from the Ryder Cup into a full season, into an Olympic year, he's lost strokes putting in 3 straight. He's lost strokes putting in 4 out of 5. He's lost around the green now in basically 4 in a row. The ball striking is good. But it's just not as sharp. And I think that is okay, right? It's going to happen. I think that he has hit a wall at this point. The 9K range, it makes me feel like Patrick Cantlay is certainly trending in the right direction. He's not played a ton of golf. He should be very fresh at this point. T12 in Memphis last week where he gained 3 shots off the tee. I think that's going to be a big telling point. If he drives it well, I think he's got a chance here. Now he's driven it well in 3 out of his last 4. Before that, it was, not nearly as good as we would expect from him, but we're starting to see the signs of his game come together a little bit. I wish I could say the same about Tony Finau. I've been very bullish on Tony the last couple of months, and I don't like what I'm seeing with the driver right now. 2.6 strokes gained. He lost in Memphis last week. He lost 4 at the Open, even to 3M at TPC Twin Cities, which, there's water out there. There's a ton of gained less than a stroke off the tee there. I'm just not as excited as I was. I'm sure I'll probably try to match the field on Tony Finau. But if you look at this, very inaccurate off the tee. I worry about him finding trouble out here. I think he's going to hit it a mile, but that doesn't excite me as much. Sam Burns, gosh, should have probably won this thing last week. Possesses, the phrase is firepower, right? Possesses all the firepower in the world. I like to see this though. And this is what the best versions of Sam Burns look like his last 3 starts, where he gains 2 or more strokes on approach and like 3 or more with the putter. And he's done that in each of his last 3. He has got to keep it dry. I think he hit it in the water God, what would that have been, on 15 on Sunday? I felt like he probably found water in other spots as well. Just like he was just not driving it well enough. But then we saw him go absolutely nuclear in situations. So I think he might be a good first round leader option. I think he could be kind of a spoiler in this thing because he's playing in the way that is really high upside. And then I'll tell you what, we were kind of tracking this last week. The conversation last week about Wyndham Clark was as follows. It was, okay, he had a miserable opening round at the Olympics, and then he had the best final 3 rounds. Well, kind of seems like he carried that over because he finished T7 in Memphis, and he, again, played very well on the weekend. So if you, it's been a bizarre year for Wyndham Clark. But if you look at this, 4 out of his last 5 starts are top 15 finishes. He won't always model well, because the one miscut at the Open, he lost 9.2 strokes. So if you're looking at the last 5 starts, one of them is going to wipe away one of his good starts and then some. And then if you go back even farther than that, the stretch that he had from the Wells Fargo to the US Open, equally as miserable. So he doesn't model well unless you're doing last 8 rounds. Last 20 rounds, last 16 rounds. But even then, you're going to get bopped on the Open Championship stuff. But this is a very good spot for him, and he's playing a lot better than I think people would perceive him to be playing. The 8K range, hard to love, admittedly. You've got a lot of guys here that didn't play well last week, might be limping a little bit to the finish line, or they're not super great fits. In general, I like Akshay Bhatia. I'm not sure this is a great spot for him, right? At $8,400. Cam Young, in theory, should be a very good spot for him. Was miserable in Memphis last week and has not gained, he hasn't gained strokes putting in 8 starts. Yes, technically he gained 0.005 over 4 rounds in Detroit and 0.009 at the Travelers. I'm going to just say he did not gain there because the other weeks he's lost at least 2.5 or more. This is just brutal. I'm not sure he can out hit this at this point. Justin Thomas, okay week last week, right? T30 at St. Jude, flashed a good Thursday, flashed a good Sunday. He's having trouble putting 4 rounds together. If I zoom out for his career, this is probably a pretty good spot for Justin Thomas, but not really the guy that we're seeing right now. So this 8K range is pretty miserable. The way that I'll probably invest is towards the bottom. Adam Scott's now picked up a ton of strokes off the tee. The only time he's lost strokes off the tee since the Masters was the Travelers Championship. You look at his finishes, runner-up the Scottish Open, T10 at the Open, T18 in Memphis last week. He should be fresh. I know he's older than a lot of these other guys, but should be fresh. He has not played a ton of golf in the last couple of months. The putter's been very good. He's picked up, 10 strokes putting in his last 4 starts. I think he has done a very good job of managing his schedule, and he's playing well. And then another older guy, crazy, he's like my age, 36, Jason Day, has now picked it up with the driver, right? After a little bit of a slump here from the PGA Championship, the Travelers, he's now picked up strokes off the tee in 4 in a row. The second shot's going to be the question here. Is he going to pick up 5 like he did at the Open, or 1 like he did in Memphis, or is he going to lose 4 or 1.2 like he's done in his other recent starts? That's going to be the key. If he can hit greens, keep it dry, I think he's in play. But that's the one thing that I'm worried about there. But in a range that really doesn't possess a lot of guys that offer confidence, you could go back to Aaron Rai, maybe just, the win hangover. He was okay last week. He's still the best trending golfer in the 8K range. He's at about 1.8 strokes gained in his trend department. He's 1 stroke per round over his 100 round baseline in the last 35. He's very accurate off the tee. He's a very good ball striker. So if you just think that, if you can give him a little bit of slack for winning in a bizarre, probably tiring week in Memphis, in Greensboro, and then finishing, I'll tell you what, it's better than I thought. Finished T16 in Memphis and gained 7.8 strokes on approach, lost 4.6 with the putter. Maybe it's Aaron Rai. Gained 7.8 ball strike, on approach and ball striking last week. Interesting. Yeah, maybe it's Aaron Rai. The 7K range does have some interesting discussions here. So I guess the good news is that Matt Fitzpatrick, who withdrew from the Olympics after 3 rounds with a thumb injury, played all 4 rounds, didn't seem to be super hampered by it, and finished T8 at the FedEx St. Jude Championship. So the good sign is that. The bad sign is the stat profile was entirely dependent on the short game. He picked up a stroke and a half around the green, 3.6 with the putter. He lost 2.3 ball. I mean, he lost tee to green and finished T18. So that tells you that his short game carried him, which is generally unsustainable. So he's now lost strokes from tee to green in 6 straight. I don't know if the thumb is an issue. I don't know. I mean, it hasn't been a good year for him anyway, but I think the T18 is probably a little fool's gold, quite honestly, because of the way that he did it. His best short game week since the Memorial, but he hit it well at the Memorial. Yeah, that's tough. Now, on the flip side of that, Robert McIntyre's T7, yes, was very much was a short game week. Gained 7.2 and finished T7, but he's still green in the ball striking categories each of the last 5 weeks. One of them includes a win there. So while I don't think he's going to gain another 7.2 strokes in the short game categories, although he gained 13 in Canada, so maybe he will. This is at least a little bit better than Fitzpatrick's because he does have probably a couple strokes of a baseline built into the ball striking or the tee to green part of this. And he's won twice this year, which not many guys can say. So I think that McIntyre is probably the better option there. Both of them are in the mid to upper $6,000 range. Davis Thompson continues to drive it well every week since the US Open, in which he's gained strokes off the tee. The approach play, which was really bad in Scotland, has cooled off a little bit, but he's basically a 0 there. We need to see that part improve because that's when he's going well, he's a better tee to green player than what we've seen, but just one category that we need to squeeze out of him. And then that's probably it. Denny was very good last week, but 6.8 strokes with the putter. He's the best putter in the world, but he's probably not going to do that. I mean, just look at this. Look, there's just so many guys here that were so reliant on the short game. And the rest, it's just not there, right? I mean, Denny's lost strokes ball striking significantly in 3 out of his last 4. So I think we've got to be fairly selective here. I don't think this is a great spot for Taylor Pendrith, but I would rather go back to Taylor Pendrith here than Denny McCarthy. Pendrith finished 22nd last week, and he got off to a very good start and then kind of got into some trouble in the middle of the tournament and then finished strong on Sunday. I wish there was not as much water or penalty. This could go sideways for Taylor Pendrith, but the skill is really good. Hasn't missed a cut since the PGA Championship. He obviously doesn't have to worry about missing a cut this week, but incredibly talented, and his last 3 starts have all been very good. I actually probably prefer just to go down to the 6K range here and buy the Nick Dunlap stock, the Will Zalatoris stock, the Eric Cole stock, Austin Eckroat stock. Those are the guys, in my opinion. So let's talk about this a little bit. Nick Dunlap, the golf gods deservingly get him into the BMW Championship, though he still has work to do, right? I mean, he's still outside the top 30. If he wants to get into East Lake, he's got to play well, and he's done that. I mean, even in the miscut at the Wyndham, he gained a stroke on approach. He gained 5.5 on approach in Memphis last week and another 3.5 with the putter. He's 20 years old. Should have been playing the US Am last week. Instead, he was solidifying his spot in all the signature events. Love this kid. Love the way he's trending. The price is much too short, much too low. Zalatoris, when I was in the presser with him at the Wyndham, he said, I want this season to end on my terms, right? I want this to end on my terms because of injury and things that have kept him out of the Tour Championship. He's never hit a shot at the Tour Championship. He could do that. He's got to play well. I think he's outside the top 30 right now. He's got to play well, but I liked what I saw last week, and I liked what I saw at the Wyndham. I liked the way he's been ball striking. The putter's been a problem. He picked up 2 strokes putting last week. Gained throughout the entire bag last week. He's now gained from tee to green in 5 out of 6. I think he's got a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. I still think he's too cheap. He's a legitimate high upside, like $6,800 for when he was his best, he was a top 10 player in the world. And I don't know how far away from that we are. The other guys, so Eric Cole and Austin Eckler were the other two guys that I mentioned here. Eric Cole, stellar Sunday, tried to give it back on 18, made an unbelievable bogey, and gets himself into this week. So now we've got a pretty sizable sample here, dating back to the Rocket Mortgage. That's 6 events in which Eric Cole has gained significantly from tee to green in all but one, and he's gained strokes putting in all of them. So whatever that summer slump was, spring and summer slump, appears to be well behind him. And $6,500 is very cheap. And then Austin Eckler, you just love the upside, right? He is a powerful scoring machine who, yes, can have a bad round like he did Saturday in Memphis or on Friday in Greensboro, right? He's close to putting 4 rounds together. And I shouldn't even say that. I mean, he's a winner on tour this year. But as of late, a lot of really good signs. 4 rounds has been difficult for him to do, but I think that he's gonna get guaranteed 4 rounds, right? He might lose 2 strokes, one of them, but he might gain 5 in another. So that's where I would be throwing my darts down here at the bottom of the board. The rest of these guys are a little uninspiring. I will, hat tip to Max Grazerman here. I was pretty invested in Max last week, and I thought we were just toes up after Thursday's round where he lost 6 strokes to the field. Played much better after that. Was a positive player in round 2, a small negative in round 3, and then he shot one of the best rounds of the day on Sunday. So I at least liked the fight and the bounce back. Eliminate that one round, and his last, 29 of his last 30 rounds have been very good. Okay. So Grazerman, I think, is still an option as well at $6,300. Let's see what the custom model has to say. So custom model, RickRunGood.com. I think we want to go pretty short term here, right? I mean, we're at that point of the year. Let's go, last 16 rounds. And let's do this. Now all these guys have stats, right? In every category. So we can be pretty comfortable about that. We want maybe a 35 off the tee, but what we're going to do is we're going to split them into 20 driving distance and 15 in accuracy. Okay. Then what we're going to do is we're going to do strokes gained approach let's do last 12 for 25. I don't think you need a great around the green game here. So let's just say strokes gained putting last 12 for 20. That leaves us with 20 more. We do not have course history. We could do, we've done putting. We could do implied win percentage. Birdies are better gained. Strokes gained total on the distribution side. Let's do that. Let's put 10 on 4+ and 10 on 5+. Our number one golfer. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Number one golfer, Xander Schauffele. I don't think I've said that in a while. He gets props or gets a boost everywhere, but driving accuracy. But I'll tell you what, I'm going to assume that a lot of that is from the Olympics because he didn't drive it well there. Hideki is number 2. That's how good he's been lately. Now, this is a little bit different because we are using such a small sample size. Sam Burns is 3. Sam Burns gets a big boost on his upside, a big boost on his putting. These are not Bermuda greens, though. They're bent grass and POA. Not that, if you care about that. Scotty Scheffler loses a little bit with the putter. Tops everywhere else. Here's Cantlay. I'll tell you, he's trending. Cantlay's 5. Nick Dunlap is 6. Nick Dunlap's upside, unbelievable. Strokes gained 4 and 5. He is 2nd and 1st. He's long enough. He's 19th in this field in driving distance. The accuracy is admittedly going to be a problem or could be a problem. And he's 19th in strokes gained approach. Look, Grazerman. Yeah. I mean, when you go small sample size, you really get some good guys here. 7th for Grazerman, 8th for Pendrith, 9th for Billy Horschel, 10th for Jason Day. So when I'm looking at this, I am worried about the guys that are highly ranked in the model, but are struggling in driving accuracy. I think that might be a problem. That's really the only problem for most of these guys. The rest of them are doing well with the putter. Scotty's the only guy losing inside the top 10 there. Billy and Jason Day might not be long enough, but I don't know if they're prohibitively short. They're 35th and 34th out of a field of 50, just below average. So I don't know if they're prohibitively short, but that's very interesting. I love using the smaller sample size there. So this will be the Monday model for the BMW Championship. Okay, cool. We can revisit that on Wednesday if we need to. All right, Wednesday live chat. Rick Run Good YouTube channel. The links for everything that you need are in the description for the Listener League contest this week or anything else that might pop up. They're always there for you. This should be fun. Basically a brand new golf course. So should be great. Looking forward to it. Talk to you guys soon.